Hello, everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. As part of as part of the series, so this audio podcast series in around the Labostix Practice Edition, as part of another sort of radio edition under Storm Labostix production. And this audio podcast is part of a series at the same time as part of and within the remit of Biomedical Science Day, Biomedical Science Day 2023. This is an audio podcast as part of the LabTide G-Force and the Bostix G-Force, and in this overview, in this audio podcast, there will be a sort of an overview in around UK Kidney Week 2023, in around UK Kidney Week 2023, and as part of this audio podcast, a little bit in around and the remit around the UK Kidney Association as well, UKKA. So the UKKA is a relatively a new organisation in some regard. However, has however sort of took over the UKKA sort of transition from the British Renal Society, or BRS, into UKK in around just over around two or three years ago now. And it's The UKKA is generally brings together into one sort of organization the 70 plus year history of the Renal Association, or the RA, and the work of the UK Renal Registry, and the British Renal Society, or BRS, and its associations. It was after 2 years, after in around 2 or 3 years, there were discussions that took place between the RA and BRS, and an over and the majority of the community had sent had inf- had it had made had sort of made an decision to see that there was a merger from the BRS, or British Renal Society, into the UK Kidney Association, or UKKA. The transition or the transition sort of reflected sort of the requirements, if you like, of the community, and the centrality of the multi-professional sort of efforts in some contexts in around kidney care practices, kidney care practices, and the UKKA at the same time has a remit where it looks to involve or have a sense of involvement from the multi in context of a multi the in context of a varying professionals in and around aspects of kidney care, and through research, quality improvement, and service and workforce development. On the UKKA website, there is some information in regards to sort of governance, sort of aspects in around quality improvement, and some some aspects in around audits, annual reports, sections of the UKKA a website also have sort of reports in context of access to sort of data in around different aspects aligned to kidney care and different forms of kidney disease. There's also sort of publications and presentations on the UKKA website, which links to the UK renal registry, UKRR, and within the remit of another sort of affiliate with UKRR being a radar, which is basically radar, which is a database which holds data underpinning sort of the basis in around data to do with for example genetic anomalies, and other and other important data in around sort of rare aspects in around findings around particular and specific sort of kidney diseases. So on the sort of publications and presentations part of the UKKA website, there's also some bases in around sort of reports, academic papers, and some presentations, there's on the same on part of the same on part of the UKKA website. There is also a part under in around under audit and research. For example, there is information about how to access specific and particular data where health professionals or researchers, investigators seek to identify certain trends in around particular diseases in and around nephrology. The website, the UKK website, also has various other sort of projects, and links to different sort of social media aligned to the UKKA. Now, in aligned to this, a bit about as part of this audio podcast, in around some aspects in around the UK Kidney Week, or UKKW 2023 that took place in sort of early June in this year, early June in 2023, and the UKKW 2023 had a remit where it had a it had a remit that invited speakers and presenters from varying parts of varying sort of renal or nephrology renal sites or nephrology departments in around the United Kingdom, to provide sort of updates really in around particular areas and specialties, in around particular areas or specialties, focusing into the more in-depth aspects in around kidney diseases, and the UKKW 2023 website has a downloadable has an overview in around those who are involved in the bringing in sort of the bringing in around bringing together different people or varying aspects of UKKW 2023, including in around the program and abstracts, in around in around communications, in around sort of administration, sort of aspects around marketing and communications and sponsorships, etc. And at the same time, the UKKW 2023 website has a page in around the program, the main program in around UKK 23, which is sort of a program that is downloadable. And going on to the UKKW 2023 website, there is a link to a downloadable program, and the seminar or the conference in around UKKW 2023 had had sort of two main floors, two main floors where there were varying sort of varying meeting rooms, including the sort of main auditorium and an exhibition section of the within as part of the remit. And within the program there is a venue floor plan. And in this in within the sort of downloadable program on the UKKW 2023 site, there is there are some there were the program the downloaded program highlights sort of presentations from varying sort of varying professionals in around kidney care practice between areas of pediatric nephrology as well as adult nephrology, although adult nephrology practices are sort of the default in context of UKKW generally, and UKK the UK Kidney Association, or UKKA generally as well. The program highlights sort of a basis in around the plenary, which took place in the auditorium, and there was the president's welcome. And there was a lecture or an overview in around data integration and synthesis for equitable kidney care. There was a presentation or an overview in around building careers together through academic advancement, and also an overview in around a presentation in value in health as well. The seminar also had the program also had within the remit had again presentations that took place across varying aspects of the disease and varying parts of the disease, and between and presentations in context between sort of professionals, researchers, investigators, between healthcare sectors. So presentations presentations that took place within the remit between primary care practices as well as secondary care practices within the generalities of UKKW 2023. There were presentations. There was a presentation, for example, in the main auditorium. In around renal services transformation. There was a presentation in around learning together with the International Society of Nephrology, another organisation in around nephrology or kidney care practices. The International Society of Nephrology, or ISN, and how global perspectives on CKD can inform practices. There was a presentation. There was a sort of presentation in stepping up to the challenge and working across boundaries to deliver the best outcomes for people with kidney disease and heart failure. And there was sort of a sort of a part of the remit around UKKW. Also UKKW 2023 also had a remit in around a journal club section wherein professionals highlighted have have an opportunity to discuss the different different and different papers that sort of are sort of that sort of are headed as sort of the main as part of the sort of main themes in around UKKW 2023 as well. So, for example, in around glomerular disease, in around transplantation, in around acute kidney injury, in around advanced CKD or chronic kidney disease and pre-dialysis, and also in general hemodialysis. There's also presentations in around the psychosocial aspects in health, in around health in health and kidney disease, and sort of identifying the evidence gaps and way forward for research, and way forward in around research, and also a sort of a sort of a theme in around shared learning, and where presentations in around this in around the shared learning theme included sort of the advantages of a clinically led commissioning network in around sort of hepatitis C positive disease organ donation or transplantation, and sort of and where there was specific experience shared in around this particular theme. There was also a basis in around delivering and accessing sort of kidney care digitally, as well. And there was a there was a theme there was another a presentation, yeah, another a few another few important presentations that as part of the UKKW 2023 themes included sort of connecting early career researchers, patients, and the public, where under this particular theme there were presentations in, for example, opportunities for early career researchers, better together in around also better together and patient involvement in research, and looking at a sort of a presentation in around there was a presentation in around looking at immune cells, are what in around immune cells or in around immune cells, and considerations in a form of renal replacement therapy, thus peritoneal dialysis, and also a presentation um, um, in co-productive studies of decision making in around RRT or renal replacement therapy. There were also presentations from in around nutritionists, those who have sort of a nutritional sort of expertise or basis in around um, sort of aspects of kidney care, and there were presentations in around sort of expertise experts in around this and under in around sort of looking at a sort of the remit where for example in context of nutrition there was a basis in around where experts were highlighting sort of um, the sort of a perspective in context of literature being available and also handbook in around the nutrition and sort of kidney care being part of one or two of the sort of presentations in around that particular theme. There was also a theme in around sort of kidney history or UK kidney history, and looking at sort of perspectives from UKKA archives. So there were presentations looking at looking at I the history and context of chronic dialysis, and looking at sort of transplantation, and also in around hepatitis as well. And there was also sort of presentations in around looking at how do we measure the burden of particular forms of renal replacement therapy. And in this context it was a presentation mainly from sort of the hemodialysis perspectives and findings. There was where one of the presenters or speakers was highlighting sort of context from a scoping review, a review of treatment treatment burden in around kidney in around hemodialysis, and as part of the present the as part of UKKW 2023, there was also presentations in around where there were various speakers and presenters highlighting sort of lived experience or shared experiences from healthcare professionals as well as patients. There were the UKKW 2023 also has a remit where there's patients who are involved in sort of co-presenting in around certain themes around the disease, around particular diseases, and there was also as part of UKKW 2023, there was a remit in around sort of a moderated sort of a research poster session that took place, wherein investigators or researchers who had abstracts accepted for research poster presentations. There was the moderated the moderated the moderated research and poster presentation session allowed investigators to to sort of highlight important aspects around in around in around the research works, and UKKW 2023 also had a sort of a detailed theme in around sort of hematology and anemia, and generally where in previous sort of remits around where the British Renal Society, or BRS, is or has been has had formerly been sort of organized the remit and the theme in around sort of nephrology or kidney diseases. Um, there had been more presentations sort of in around the in sort of a remit in around hematology, as the case in UKKW 2023. However, in previous sort of remits versus the remit this year, or in 2023, have been that have been sort of more presentations in around sort of the burden in around anemia for those who suffer with CKD, with forms of chronic kidney disease, and those who suffer from varying forms of kidney disease. So there was a theme in around pioneers in practice, real life patient experiences in anemia of CKD and of CKD management. And in previous remits, there had not been sort of real life patient experiences actually highlighted or sort of for a sort of where patients, for example, had opportunity to sort of share experiences in around sort of the anemic symptomology that exists in around CKD management. So there was this theme, there was this the theme in around sort of patient experience of anemia in CKD management, and there were present there were varying speakers and presenters in around the sort of anemia, the sort of CKD management of anemia, and there were also varying presentations, varying presentations in around the genetics and sort of unexplained or the unexplained or idiosyncrasy in around sort of the unknown forms of or sort of almost rare sort of symptomologies that exist in around CKD. So there was a theme around genetics and the genetics and unexplained CKD, and what's new, and what do professionals, health professionals, researchers sort of need to know. So there were presentations in around sort of monogenic contributors to chronic kidney disease, and also setting up an unexplained CKD clinic as well. And there was also a theme in around UKKW 2023 in around challenges of chronic hyperkalemia, so high potassium, for example, in CKD management, and where some of the presentations some of the themes and presentations were sponsored by pharmaceutics, sponsored by pharmaceutics as well. And there was also sort of there was or had been a sort of a social component to UKKW 2023 to the UKKW 2023 remit, wherein there was also a sort of a social component towards one end of one of the particular days that had taken place. There was also within the remit as well. There was also um, uh, presentations in around filling in sort of filling in the gaps, and sort of beyond in context of this of kidney in around kidney care in around kidney care. And there was uh, um, presentations in around particular clinical trials and clinical trials and interventional trials, where researchers, investigators highlighting sort of highlighting any particular and important sort of results in around clinical trials that patients have been recruited into, and there were presentations in empowering partnerships through information and technology to improve outcomes, transplantation, peer support in around renal services. There were presentations in treatment updates in glomerulonephritis, or GN, and vasculitis, in around also kidney replacement therapy in people with other particular primary health conditions, looking at sort of data some data where there was a theme within UKKW 2023 and around UK renal the renal data registry and joint renal health data network, and there was also sort of a theme in around microRNAs as biomarkers and regulators in kidney disease, and there was a theme in around hemodialysis and safer care, and sort of in around where the theme had presentations looking at sort of sort of collaborative works, sort of in a theme in around the same theme in around this theme, sort of looking at collaborations, but also life-threatening vascular access issues, and also and sort of how the care for patients could be better in context of renal replacement therapy and hemodialysis, and where as part of treatment, as part of renal replacement therapy, could be sort of a better way to see that the monitoring aspects of patient care is better, where the hemodialysis procedure could include a sort of safe alarm handling, or sort of better or better or smarter alarms as part of the procedure, and there were presentations in around development of a virtual reality-based educational tool for training in peritoneal dialysis of patients and families and staff. There were presentations also in looking at efficacy and safety of particular therapeutics, and there were presentations looking at presentations again, sort of examples of peer support collaborations. There were presentations also from where sort of in around the best science abstracts. Varying abstracts that had been selected by the scientific committee at UKKW had listed out varying abstracts, and where these abstracts form sort of the best science abstracts in UKKW 2023. And there were presentations about sort of what's hot, what's new in around kidney transplantation. There were presentations in around personalizing care and valuing patient contribution, shared decision making and partnership. There was presentations in sort of in around the more intricacies in around implementing trials, implementing sort of clinical trials or trials in around medical practices. There were presentations where there were findings in around a particular anemia investigation or study that has been taking place, and sort of where the presenter and researcher was sort of highlighting the findings in around this anemia investigation. There are presentations, sort of joint presentations as well, between the British and Irish sort of hypertension society as well. There were presentations in around calciphylaxis, and there were presentations in clinical pathological correlation, and a list of where the scientific and organizing committee had listed out the varying the varying sort of abstracts in around the clinical pathological correlations, so presentations, for example, included a case of BK sort of BK a virus or BK virus induced tubular interstitial nephritis in the native kidneys of an immunosuppressed patient. There was also a presentation and general theme also in around ethics in transplantation in around transplantation, and where there was presentations in this theme in around ethics of in around transplantation, and how to combat organ trafficking, and also recent issues with unethical practices, and sort of case examples or case stories. And there was also a theme, a theme, and perhaps unfortunately I didn't get to listen in on the presentations in around this particular theme, but there was a theme in around the cost of living and kidney patients, and what you can do, and there were presentations, for example, with life on hemodialysis, how Kidney Care UK can help, and setting the in a presentation in around setting the scene, and presentations from in around sort of energy and transport reimbursement, and also as part of and also where in this theme and around this particular theme there was a focus where there was a panel and audience discussion, panel and audience sort of discussion as well. There was also a presentations around a theme, a sort of where in around sort of a new skills based research resource for kidney health professionals, talking about people talking about sorry talking with people about kidney failure and end of life care or palliative medicine. And the presentations included sort of a sort of an intro to the development of difficult conversations like booklet, in around difficult conversations booklet. And there were presentations in around thinking about future treatment and care, and also presentations in around experiences of end of life care or EOL, and people in around people suffering with kidney disease, and their families. And in this theme, or part of this theme, there was a panel discussion, a panel discussion as well. And there was also themes in around sort of in around sort of tackling the burden in around the pandemic, and sort of COVID-19 in what have been referred to as clinically vulnerable patients with disease, and where there were presentations from professionals in in at Imperial College in London, and Guy's and St Thomas Healthcare Trust in London. And there was a theme in around a in around a panel discussion, a panel discussion, and sort of inviting speakers, sorry, inviting sort of those at UKKW 2023 to join in on a discussion around the management of anemia and CKD, and again a few presentations were focused and sort of sponsored by um, by and from the pharmaceutical or pharmaceutics industry as well. And in around the in around some additional in around the subsequent one of the sort of follow up days as part of UKKW, there was presentations in around looking at the psychosocial aspects of kidney care, looking at the science in around particular themes as well, around around nephrology of kidney care. In around there was a theme in around the rare renal disease, and rare renal disease research, and there was a theme in around how to manage the failing kidney or renal allograft. So those who have been transplanted, and where the transplants are where transplants have a sort of have a probability a probability that the in context of physiology and immunology, where the allograft is has a probability of rejection. And there was a presentation. There was a theme in around vascular axis, in around in around around kidney care, and there was a presentation and theme in around how do we optimize how do we optimize outcomes in around acute kidney injury, and there were sort of in around some themes. There were specific abstracts that formed sort of the sort of presentations in particular in around particular themes as well. There were presentations as well in context of in context of physiotherapy, physiotherapy and other sort of presentations. Other sort of abstracts from varying other healthcare professional sections, and there was a presentation in around motivations, experiences, and support needs in around adults living with adult living renal donors, and a presentation in context of a systematic review and a systematic review and a thematic synthesis of qualitative investigations. There was a presentation in around looking at in around sort of um, uh, looking at mitochondria and like mitochondria localizing fragments and renal cystogenesis in a diagenic polycystic kidney disease model and there was a presentation in around looking at immunosuppression modulation outcomes post-transplant cutaneous squamous cell carcinoma, and there was a presentation looking at the problem or phenomena in around thrombectomy for arteriovenous fistula and arteriovenous grafts as well. And again, there was sort of a social component to UKKW on one of the at UKKW 2023 as part of one of the sort of subsequent days that took the remit took place. There was also a plenary looking at future of older people's care in context of kidney disease and the role of renal services, multiple long-term conditions and kidney care challenges and opportunities in around research and practice. And there was a remit in around renal and arts, and sort of looking at how art can help enhance or improve a sort of quality of life in groups of in groups of patients, or in around aspects of patient care. There was a remit in around looking at health inequalities in research and in practice. There was a theme in around the joys and tribulations of working with young adults, or those who sort of transition from pediatrics, suffering those pediatrics or young people suffering with kidney disease and going into and transitioning into adult renal services. And so there were examples of sort of the in around the joys and tribulations in this context. And there was a theme in around in around home hemodialysis, for example, and looking at current practices, challenges and future sort of and future sort of future sort of advances, and there was a theme also in around looking at CKD, chronic kidney disease, and chronic kidney disease in females and pregnancy, in pregnancy, and sort of updates in context of clinical practice. There was a theme also in around looking at in around again in around sort of the physiology, in context of physiology, and looking at the looking at physiology and anatomy in context of the renal tubules, and there was a theme in around sort of around late breaking abstracts, and where the theme around late breaking abstracts had several abstracts which were selected, which had been selected by the organizing and committee to uh, uh, to uh, to allow researchers and investigators to highlight highlight sort of highlight important highlight sort of findings in around the late in around late breaking abstracts. There were also uh, there was also sort of sort of a main theme, as part of UKKW 2023, looking at the challenging the status quo in cardiorenal optimization. So there were presentations from expert specialists, talking highlighting a particular sort of challenges in around this theme. And again, there were also themes in around best clinical abstracts, so best clinical abstracts, and also and also sort of abstracts in around abstracts in around scientific advances in understanding glomerulonephritis, and in around genetic kidney diseases, and lessons from the old and new opportunities. And there were again there were also themes in around tackling health inequalities through multi-level partnership working, and there were presentations in around in around looking at solutions focused approach to addressing health inequalities, and looking at sort of sort of peer education, and uh, generally the UKKW 2023 also had an interventional nephrology interventional nephrology drop in sort of session, where between the different days, UKKW 2023 allowed there was opportunity for professionals, investigators, researchers, for example, to check out aspects in around venous access, complex venous access, percutaneous peritoneal dialysis access, to develop a parietal dialysis program, and also in around interventional nephrology experiences, and in around experiences and training. So the theme the full sort of remit around UKKW 2023 can be identified UKKW 2023 can be identified through the main website, and the main website also uh, uh, has uh, has an overview in around sort of the different sort of different contexts for those who were intrigued to attend UKKW 2023 on the website on the site, and also there was at the at UKKW 2023. There were various exhibitors, and the various exhibitors from for example, from uh, exhibitors representing medical journals, pharmaceutical those from pharmaceutics industries, those from exhibitors from different sort of kidney organizations and kidney sort of charities. There were there were um, there were ex, exhi- there were exhibitors uh, from uh, from a varying academic institutions and sort of patient based organizations as well, and within the actual program, or the program of UKKW 2023, the exhibitors are listed were listed in the main sort of within the main program of UKKW 2023, and along with aside with sort of those speakers and presenters are across the different days of UKKW 2023, who would be who were presenting works and research, and alongside within the handbook, where there was a list of where there was a list of those sort of presentations that were presented as research posters as well. So that draws this sort of overview of UKKW 2023 to a close. To a close. On social media, there will be some information pertaining to pertaining to the pertaining to where viewers or listeners can identify further information, can identify further information, and also there will be a a a list, sort of a list of sort of further sort of information in and across the Storm Labostix social media. So once again, this audio podcast has been organized in linking with and linked to Biomedical Science Day 2023, And this has been an audio podcast as part of a Labostix Practice edition, an audio podcast as part of the LabTide GeForce, as part of an audio podcast as part of a Bostix GeForce, and an audio podcast as part of another radio edition under Storm Labostix production. Thank you for tuning in.